Welcome to the All New 52 podcast. I'm Joe,
And I'm Caleb.
and each episode we will be bringing you a new comic to discuss. This week, Ultimate Spider-Man, in whichever form you prefer, and different cover art.
Yeah. One cover art is more, in line with the art, I would say. That's just kind of
One is
out of
better,
nowhere.
I would say, but
One is photorealistic.
this week we're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man. I said that already, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
By Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley.
Art by Mike Bagley, writing by good old Bendis. Someone else was also on the story, too. Let's look that up.
Really?
Yeah, I noticed that. See, this is why I read things. Bill Jimmez was also doing story, but Brian Michael was just on the words.
Well, oh yeah, Bill Jimmez, huh? Would you look at that? But good old Bendy is who we're here for, of course. This is his claim to fame, after all.
Or is it every other thing he's written? Because he has written just about every Marvel character.
That was his rise. Like, that was the first thing he had complete control of. Someone say it's his peak. I say this not having read much Brian Michael Bendis stuff.
It's fine.
But this is a series I recently got into, and I'm quite enjoying it. After being told by every Spider-Man fan I should get into it because I would enjoy it. But now I am.
Yeah, so why... Because Spider-Man's your favorite superhero.
Of course, yes.
Why didn't you get into it sooner?
Because I've heard about the Ultimate Universe and how weird, and I've seen designs, and I've heard about the stuff they pull from it and other forms of media, and I'm like, I like my 616 stuff a little bit more, a lot more, but...
Ultimate has a reputation, but I'd say Spider-Man probably is the best it has to offer. From just, I've not read anything else Ultimate, but...
I have since started reading almost everything Ultimate. And yes, so far Spider-Man has been the best it has to offer because it changes the least while also introducing the most creative new things.
Yeah. Or at least of the main four. I'm sure a lot of the miniseries are good. Just because miniseries easier to get, like 3 issues, right, than
133, something like that. So Ultimate Spider-Man is just a retelling of the classic Peter Parker Spider-Man story, just in a modern age at the time. 2000s are kind of dated now, and that's
a little bit.
That's something we'll get into. But for the most part, I think it does a really good job with a new pacing while also introducing new story elements at different times.
Yeah, I was kind of trepidatious reading this at first because the Spider-Man origin is just so familiar.
It's so ingrained.
Yeah, and so I was just kind of worried about it. But I do think there's enough of a core story there that Bendis is able to flesh it out nicely. I especially like what he does with tying in Norman's backstory to it while not making it a story about Norman.
Yeah, Norman's kind of underutilized in this first year of the run, where also it almost falls into the issue that I think the Amazing movies kind of fell into, where it's like an Oscorp is responsible for everything that goes on.
Well, it's responsible for Peter and Norman.
So far.
Yeah, and then we know Doc Ock works there.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, like I said, a lot of things can come from it. But I'm kind of fine with that if it's done like organically, because a lot of Spider-Man villains, I'm sorry, Joe, a lot of Spider-Man villains are exactly the same.
Oh, I mean, you have Scorpion Man and you have Vulture Man. One stings, one flies.
And let's throw in Rhino Man.
Yeah. He runs fast and hard.
And he has a big old horn.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have the most creative villains, but I mean, they're iconic for a reason.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, jumping into it, did you enjoy this story?
Yeah, I did. I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan, but that also doesn't mean I don't like him. It just means he's not the superhero I'm naturally drawn to.
Yeah.
But I do think that Bendis laid this out really well. He was able to throw in the theme about responsibility and draw that out really well over the course of a year. I thought it was going to get a little draining, but he's able to slowly introduce it here and there. And what I like about it is, like, I feel like by the end, without explicitly saying anything, Peter has learned a lesson
Oh
because
yeah.
he's not going after the credit for incriminating the Kingpin or anything. He's fine just kind of doing a stealth mission, even though he is, from a media perspective, a villain. He's not going to use this as a opportunity to clear his name. He cares more about actually doing the work of being a superhero.
He is like, he has a heart of gold in this, and
Yeah.
while also having like the teenage angst, but he is mainly in it for the right thing, even when he's pinned as a villain, which I like in this. They actually, it's not just Jonah being like, and Spider-Man's the villain, he was helping him out. It's like, no, they actually frame it in a way where his actions and what he's doing, he seems suspicious to like the outside eye.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's like Jonah's presented with two things. I don't know, but this guy's kind of sus, or this guy's kind of sus.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to sell newspapers. He's obviously going for one of those.
Yeah. So things I liked about it. I think the original, we know the original Spider-Man story, but you know, the way it's originally presented, very short, jumped right into just being Spider-Man. And then you kind of get the backstory over the course of like the first 200 issues or whatever the amount is, where you don't explicitly see everything. You just kind of get told about this. He doesn't put on the suit for the first 7 issues or something like that. He doesn't get when does he get the spider powers? Does he get that issue 1?
Yeah, I believe issue 1 ends
with the bite.
We do have 2 copies of it, right?
That's true. We can reference.
I think it ends with him climbing on the ceiling, but I'm not positive. Also, they don't. Let's see. I started with the hardback, and the hardback doesn't really break up.
It doesn't break up the issues.
Well.
It's annoying.
You get some spider sense early on, and then it ends with him climbing on the ceiling.
Okay, so he gets the powers early on, but he doesn't get the suit. You get a lot of build up to this suit. Almost, honestly, like the amount of build up that the Raimi movie did it, where it's like it's an hour before you even see Spider-Man.
Well, and so this came out in 2000. Do you know if it came out before or after the Raimi movie?
Came out before.
Okay.
And there is pictures of them referencing it. Toby and Sam referencing it.
I mean, it's a good basis for that story. But it feels, both of those feel like their own thing.
Oh yeah.
So.
But also other things I enjoy. You have the immediate first attack with the Goblin, where they don't know what's going on. It's like, what on earth is this big green monster that's not the Hulk?
Yeah, they think it's the Hulk.
They think it's the Hulk.
Or at least Kong does, the best
character. And then it's kind of pushed to the side, and they're like, wow, what was that? And then you get into a smaller, I mean, Kingpin is no small business, but comparatively to Big Green Monster Man,
he's a big deal.
Comparatively to the Big Green Monster Man.
It's more, instead of sci-fi, it's more like ground level mobster stuff.
Yeah, mobster stuff, which I think is you ramp up things.
And you still have character there. Obviously, Kingpin is a larger than life character. But you also have Electro, and the Enforcers all have kind of fun personalities.
Yeah. It's the beginning of a new universe. You start small, you build to the big stuff. You don't start with the big monster man who's world ending and then go to small stuff.
And personally, like, Spider-Man is uninteresting to me if he's fighting world-ending threats.
Oh yeah, no. Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man are the stories I enjoy.
Yeah, it's
not the team ups.
You know, his neighborhood has the Shocker and and like Hydro Man
and Molten Man.
Yeah, not exactly the most normal neighborhood
threats.
Yeah. How do you feel about the high school stuff in this? Because one of our problems with the MCU movies is that the high school stuff it kind of takes away from the rest of the movie. It can be a little bit irritating.
Well, yeah, with the MCU stuff, I feel like we're going to be doing a lot of comparing it because this is so much more influential, I feel like, to the movies where there's much more stuff to pull because he's in high school for this entire run. It is 1 year of his life compared to, the life that 616 Peter Parker has lived, basically. The MCU stuff feels like 2 separate movies. Because while he's doing the high school stuff, there's almost never any Spider-Man stuff involved. Spider-Man isn't really he doesn't have the Parker luck where he has to choose the greater responsibility over his life. While in this, it's pretty directly ingrained. But there's a direct correlation between I have to choose to do this over letting my friends down or, my social status.
Yeah. I also feel like these characters, even though they're using very 2000s slang,
Oh yeah.
and just referencing things that severely date the book, I feel like they do feel like actual teenage characters in a way that a lot of times in all of the Spider-Man movies, the teenagers don't necessarily feel authentic. They feel
Yeah.
more performative.
Oh, these definitely feel like teenagers of their time.
Yeah.
Like we'll see how well that keeps it going when I keep reading, but man, this screams 2000s in the best ways and the worst ways.
They just my favorite part is when Spider-Man his peak at or Peter at his peak genius level computer skills is creating a fake email account.
I just don't know how to work these dang computers.
He catfishes a security company. And that's it. Like, but it makes sense for the time. It makes.
Oh yeah, it's a new thing, and kids were very in the know about it.
I think my favorite 2000s thing is when Flash and Kong are arguing about Keanu Reeves movies. Since we are in the Keanu-sance, it's just like you could apply that to what it is today,
Yeah.
but his career is so different.
radically different from what it used to be.
Kong is here for Cyberpunk
2077.
77, yeah.
So we can segue with Kong. There's some new characters introduced. Some stuff in my eye. We got some new characters introduced. We got good old Kong, who kind of replaces Flash in this book, even though Flash is in it.
I think it splits Flash up, and gives Flash someone to bounce off of.
Yeah, the jock would have a jock friend.
Yeah.
And other jocks.
Yeah.
It's not that he's the most popular kid in school. He's part of the popular group. And then we have Liz, who I don't think gets to do much in this, but she's just mean and rude. But it's another girl character, so we don't just have Mary Jane and Gwen, who's not even in it yet.
Yeah. And you have Harry in it for a bit, but not much.
No, he just kind of comes in to be like, I'm here.
Yeah. And I don't really get his relationship with Peter. Like, they hang out once, but the way they're talking, I'm like, do y'all hang out a lot? Are you actually friends?
It's very vague on how they do it.
But I do kind of wish we saw, it feels like a small school. I kind of wish we saw some more students.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Peter has to interact with why isn't Peter friends with more nerdy people? Right? Like, there's reasons that could be the case.
He definitely seems less nerdy overall. Like, oh, I get A+ in all my science quizzes, and I just study all the time, and just more like an outcast. Like, he just does not have the social skills to really build a group of friends and that's just kind of what they pick on him for, where he's the weird kid.
Mm-hmm.
And like, those definitely exist.
They also incorporate like high school life into it really well. Like, there's a scene where they're talking about the Nixon tapes, and that directly ties into like what Peter is investigating with Kingpin. So like, man,
he's learning from his like actual life and being able to adapt it.
Yeah, it feels like
his crime fighting.
There's more to him being a teenager than just like going to parties.
Yeah. So yeah, I think nice origin. Oh, we get a lot of Uncle Ben in this.
Yeah, we do. And
a lot of hippie Uncle Ben.
Yeah, I like him. We get basically the amazing speech where he dances around saying great
he just
responsibility.
dances. He won't say it.
Now that's fine because Spider-Man later says it.
Mm-hmm.
That works in here, but maybe more so than in the Amazing Spider-Man. But
how much Aunt May do we get in this? I mean, enough because Uncle Ben's in it.
I say we get a good amount, and it's interesting take. Like, because there's a scene where she's talking to Peter. It's like, do you like me? Like, because neither of us chose to live like this.
Oh yeah, it's a very firm, distraught like woman who was not prepared for. No one's prepared for their husband to be taken away, but her life has not been what she thought it was going to be, basically.
And then at the end, we get some fun stuff with Mary Jane and Peter about to kiss.
Oh yeah,
and then just this awkward scene, and you can tell that Aunt May's just milking it. Making it awkward, trying to break the two up. So I say we get a good Aunt May, and she's not just like, oh, here's a good old lady who's always nice to Peter.
No, she's now has to be the mother figure.
Yeah,
and like the mother and the father figure, where you kind of feel like she was able to be the nice mother figure before, where she didn't really have to be the reprimanded one.
See, I actually think it's the opposite. I think she gets on Peter more, and then Ben's able to soften it because Ben is just such.
I think Ben's able to soften it, but now she's getting on to him more, and like doesn't know when to stop.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have Ben to like calm her down. It's like it's not that big of a deal.
And there's a generational conflict too, which is why I'm less interested in a younger Aunt May, is because like she just doesn't know how to relate to Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's trying to instill in him values that are good and important values and will later help him be Spider-Man.
But she just doesn't know how to help him with his current life, with the problems he's currently facing.
Yeah, she's still stuck in the past a little bit because she was never gonna, like, at least the impression I get from here is she and Ben were never gonna have kids.
No, yeah. They got thrust a kid from their sister and brother-in-law or however it is. And like they love him to death. But they just were not prepared for it, and they got him at the worst possible time when it's like there's all this drama that comes into her life. Everything is the biggest deal that it could possibly be, even though it's not.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the art?
You know, it's kind of. I think it starts out a little rough, and either I got used to it or it just kind of smooths out a little bit and gets better. Because, you know, every era of comics, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, they all have a very distinct look to them.
Yeah, the style changes.
This is distinctly 2000s, but I think without the extremely over-exaggerated facial expressions that the 2000s kind of get pegged for nowadays, where this is going for realistic expressions. Maybe not so in design, but these people's faces aren't going to contort in a weird manner at any point, unless it's, you know, a super stylized splash or something.
Yeah,
but overall, I like it.
There are always edges to an art style where it starts to like it just gets weird and uncanny. But I feel like if you buy into the art style enough, you don't have to pay attention to that. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the case here. My big issue with the art, because it's good art, but they use close-ups, especially like close-ups of eyes.
Lot. The tiny panel where someone's glaring.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of back and forth like it's a Sergio Leone movie. I'm like, okay, calm down. I've seen this at the end of every single one of your issues.
You have the cutting back and forth, and then you also have the infamous Bendis writing, where someone's just repeating what they said for like an entire page.
Conversations pick up in the middle of like you just jump into a scene, which works in movies, works in TV, does not work in comics, in my opinion. Never bad enough that like I stopped enjoying reading it.
Yeah,
but very distracting.
I don't think it's too much of a detriment to this, because while these are established characters, it is a new take. It's not like coming into a already established run and then completely changing up how a person talks. This is how they start talking, so you can kind of get used to it. It becomes a problem when everyone starts talking like that. Kids, I understand. That's how kids talk, kind of. They don't start complete thoughts a lot of the time.
But even at the beginning, you have Norman talking to like his little assistant, and he's just like, they're constantly interrupting each other, and he's telling a very bizarre version of the myth of Arachne. I almost forgot about it till just now. And I'm like, Athena was not the good guy in that story. But like, it feels like he's trying to write like for TV, very quick, like walk and talk, like Aaron Sorkin type dialogue. Mm-hmm. But of course, the reader chooses the pace of and the inflection of how to read. So I feel like having it be a little less energetic. That's not the right word, but
I think it is, because people are interjecting into someone's lines already. Like people are interrupting constantly.
It makes it a little tedious at points, but never too much.
We're already kind of in it. Let's get into stuff we dislike. Don't like, dislike. Same thing. I know it's very much a product of its time. And it doesn't help itself with the constant references that date it a lot. And also how they talk. I understand 2000s weren't the most like PC time. It's really weird when people are just saying words that we don't say anymore.
Or even like not necessarily specific words, just like like, oh, you're such a girl. And I'm like,
Yeah,
really? That's
yeah,
the
that
best you
is
have?
that. Yeah,
But in 2000s, I guess, I wasn't a teenager in the 2000s. Like,
I guess. I mean, I watched enough movies from then. That's definitely how the movies talked.
there were slightly more hearty insults in my day. But,
Back in my time.
they couldn't exactly print all the words that I'm sure you heard in high school.
They
so.
definitely they go a little deep into it, and even Spider-Man, his insults are like his jokes so far. He's like just straight up making fun of people, and like he does that to an extent, but there's almost no cleverness to it at first, and I don't know if they're trying to do that where like he's learning to be clever because they very much say he's like, oh, I'm just spouting nonsense, and I'm gonna pee my pants right now.
I laughed a lot when he just pulls out.
Oh, the cue cards for the
Yeah.
fat jokes. That's great. I think that's when he's learned how to do it.
And that's clearly him punching up too. Like, especially since it's not math, it's 300 pounds of pure muscle.
Of course.
As so famously said on one of the Spider-Man shows. I don't remember which one.
Yeah. Another thing I dislike. You have this very efficient Kingpin. So from what we see, like Montana messes up, Kingpin's like, okay, you screwed up. I'm going to crush your head.
It's not Montana. It's Big Guy who messes up, but yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It's not Montana? Okay.
I mean, maybe he doesn't in the next.
I think
trade.
it is Montana.
No, it's not.
Oh.
Because there are two enforcer fights in this.
Okay. He crushes one of the enforcer's heads. Point being. And then they get to the point, they unmask Peter. And like, we'll drop him off the building. We'll do the classic. We won't see the body, but we'll just assume.
I mean, they're very high up, and they don't know his powers. I can let that slide. And
I feel like the efficient Kingpin that we see, like no loose ends, it's a little bit of an oversight. I don't want to get in too much into like plot holes because you can nitpick and everything will fall apart if you look hard enough.
And you can excuse any individual decision. I was like, oh, he's at a party. He's got other things to do. But I mean, a bullet through the brain is definitely more
efficient. Yeah. Another thing I don't like, I appreciate the new take on the Goblin. Hate this look.
Oh, yeah.
It's so stupid. It gets a little better as time goes on.
His face is green.
Yeah. It gets a little better and he's all green later on. Still just big demon face. And he keeps a hood just on like a hood on a coat rack. Like a trash bag essentially. Or he's like, this is my persona.
I will say I enjoy the Norman stuff up until a point, but eventually it's just like, well, we stop seeing his perspective. He kills his wife, who we have never seen. So like, I'm like, okay, I thought Harry didn't have a mom in this, like in the Raimi movies, but okay. And then just Harry disappears. So I feel like they're the first half Norman, definitely very strong.
Oh,
second half Green Goblin, maybe a little bit more.
If I get you around to year 2, it's even more of that like Norman's great. As soon as Green Goblin comes in, it's like, what is going on?
I do think I have this more so with the first half of the comic, and I actually think I mentioned this to you. I feel like I know every character except for Peter at a certain extent, and Mary Jane. I feel like Bendis just kind of assumes that because it's a Spider-Man and because it's a retelling, we're just going to kind of go with those
Fill in
characters.
the blanks.
Yeah, and so I feel like I know Norman. I feel like I know Kong. I feel like I know JJ. I feel like I know Uncle Ben. I just don't feel like I know Peter. Eventually, that turns around. In the Kingpin arc, that turns around. I still don't really know Mary Jane that well, but I really like that last issue.
I want to say that's like a lack of the writing, but because I don't think she gets much better, but it becomes a plot point later on just to, like, I don't know if it was him doing cleanup where he's like, I haven't really talked about this lady in her life much at all, but she kind of brings it up later where she's like, Peter, this is all about you. You never ask how I'm doing. Like, It's like and he doesn't even know like what's going on in her life. She'll bring up stuff. He's like, oh, so I don't know if that was intentionally set up to where
that feels like damage control.
Yeah. But I think I appreciate this newer take on Mary Jane.
I like them together in that last issue. And like I don't know. I don't tend to think of them as like a romance and like give them much credit because it's just kind of assumed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once Gwen's dead, they're gonna be together.
Yeah.
There might be a couple girls on the way, but I did actually like finishing that first issue. I'm like, oh, I want to see them together. This is nice.
It's a very cute high school romance where they're figuring stuff out with each other, and then Peter's like, yes, I'm in love with this girl, my first crush in high school. I'm gonna give her my secret identity because of course he would. He's an idiot kid.
Yeah, and that works up until the point when you also have to tell Gwen, and you also have to tell Liz. I don't know if he dates Liz in this.
I don't either.
But just up until that point, like it's like, oh wait, who should I not tell?
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy it. That was my favorite issue, is when it's just him and Mary Jane talking.
Oh yeah. He knows how to write his high schoolers right now.
Yeah.
Like they are definitely good together. I like a lot of the high school stuff in this, like way more than I thought I would. Because I like the balance between his the Spidey life and whatnot. But I'm here for Spidey action.
Yeah.
But honestly, I enjoy the high school stuff just as much in this.
Did you notice that there were a lot of flashbacks in this? Like a lot of flashbacks?
No.
They cut back.
Maybe it just,
all the time.
Maybe I just didn't notice, or I'm misremembering.
Maybe it's because I was reading it rather quickly, and like issue to issue, I bet that would help remind you what happened. But man, there were just some pages I'm like, oh, I've seen all this, and it's good.
Oh, you mean straight up flashbacks, like stuff we've already read before, not like a flashback and we're getting new info.
Yeah.
But just like, and Kingpin dropped me out the window, and it just replays like the window scene or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the Kingpin arc is the best, like the high point of this year.
Yeah, that's what I like the most.
He kind of gets into the groove of things.
He becomes, he's not fully Spidey yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's still kind of figuring it out, but I feel like he has his moral code more figured out, and now he's just figuring out operations stuff.
Yeah. Him messing up profoundly the first time. It's like he almost gets himself killed. But it's hilarious to read and see him just like, you're doing all this wrong, buddy. You just don't know what you're in for.
I'm good. Do you have anything
I'm
else?
good too. I really enjoyed this Ultimate Spider-Man. I did not think I would enjoy it as much as I did. And sidebar, I mean, not really a sidebar. This has, I don't want to say it's gotten me into the Ultimate Universe. I have forced it upon myself to get into the Ultimate Universe and read everything.
Still the best thing you've read so far?
Yeah, I've read Ultimates, and I started Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra and Ultimate Fantastic Four. Ultimates has its moments, but man, you think this is dated. Ultimates is so dated.
Yeah. So do you think this fulfills the purpose of the Ultimate Universe, which was to create a jumping on point for new fans?
Definitely. I think this is a great jumping on point, and even in 2020 now, like starting with this is a great idea.
Yeah, it is dated, and there are a bunch of like tiny small things that bug me, like the zooming in on all the time, and like a couple of the dialogue things. But I did enjoy it.
I think it's small enough to where you can easily look past it, and it only gets better.
Yeah,
from what I've read.
All right.
So do you want to hand the pizza platter that you brought in before we started filming?
I do. So, like I said in the last episode, these first couple episodes are us going to be kind of laying the groundwork of the characters we like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already told you I'm not going to force you to read Spider-Gwen right away because you've read it already. You don't like it. I will
give it another chance.
We'll get to a version of Spider-Gwen. I just have to figure out which one.
Yeah.
And then Zatanna, we'll wait on Zatanna. She's my fave. We'll wait on her. However, if I can't go for a character, then I can go for a team.
Are we doing Justice League Dark? Oh, God Loves Man Kills!
So I figured we would go with what is one of the most definitive X-Men stories. I wanted to do all of the Dark Phoenix saga, but for some reason, 3 years of comics apparently is too much for one episode. So yeah, I thought we would start with that. I know you've read it before, but
it's been years.
Yeah, it's been a bit. So
I'm excited.
And it's pretty short too.
Yeah, so. that just for this is a hardback, but it's substantially different.
One graphic novel versus
13 issues.
Yeah, a year of comics.
So yeah, thanks for tuning into this episode of All New 52. We'll be back in 2 weeks with God Loves Man Kills. Please, if you would, like and rate us on iTunes and Spotify. I don't know what you can do on Spotify. I've never used it for podcasts.
You can't do it on Spotify, but you can do it on Stitcher, Podbean, most of the
Yeah,
places.
all the places that we're at, wherever you're listening, do whatever it is to give us a positive, glowing review.
What was that email we had, Joe?
allnew52podcast@gmail.com.
Send us your feedback and stuff. Once Joe gives me the password, I can check it and read your
Yeah,
read your
and
little
then,
notes.
recommendations. Maybe we'll take a recommendation from a viewer. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and eventually we'll get social media for you to follow.
Eventually.
That's Joe's job, though.
So, thanks for watching. See y'all later.